A curious trend is picking up on OTT platform these days. About 2 months ago, I watched a series called Tribhuvan Mishra CA Topper. It's around a chartered accountant who turns to male escort work to survive during banking crisis. I think just a month later, another series dropped, Rangeen. Its protagonist starts his journey as a male escort, driven by revenge and self-discovery. Both shows shared a similar approach. They portrayed these men as witty, charming, sometimes even heroic figures navigating love, money, and survival. And this made me wonder that when it comes to stories about women in sex work, the treatment is so different. They are mostly set in brothels, framed by struggle and crisis, often in historical settings. Think Hira Mandi or Gangubai Kathiawadi. But why is this? Why do gigolos get the glamorous, modern treatment, while female sex workers are often trapped in narratives of victimhood or tragedy? And to explore this, we asked film critic Aseem Chhabra to weigh in.
So there have been films like Pakiza, there have been films like, Rekha dancing in Salame Ishq Meri Jaan. There was a lot of sadness associated with those female sex workers. As compared to that, male sex workers, the gigolos, it's a very new phenomena in the writings in Indian cinema and OTT platforms especially. There was a film called BA Pass that came out I think about 15 years ago or something like that, 10, 15 years ago, where there's a young guy who's a BA student and doesn't get a job, and then he starts to sleep with these high-end, high-class women in Delhi, actually. Perhaps there's a belief that male sex workers only reside in big cities, which is, I think, not correct at all. I guess it's a new phenomena, so there's a way of looking at them. The lens with which they're looked at has a much more of not a positive, but a happier tone than what the female sex workers had.
In both cases, these male escorts are modern, living in today's world with complex motivations. They are allowed to be funny, flawed, even heroic. They get humor, freedom, and agency, and their sexuality is explored with a wink and a laugh. Now compare this to women's sex work on screen. Hira Mandi is set in the past, focusing on tawaifs and the fading culture of courtesans, a deeply historical and tragic setting. And Gangubai Kathiawadi, while powerful and inspiring, still shows a woman who rises through the brutal, exploitative world of a brothel. Women are rarely given the same freedom. Stories of female sex workers are heavy with trauma and history. Their sexuality is tied to pain or oppression, not choice or empowerment. Aseem, do you think that audiences are drawn to the taboo factor, or is it about the curiosity around male sexuality on screen?
I think it might be a little bit of curiosity. I think it's a lot more of curiosity, actually, than a taboo issue, because I think people are usually, people who are watching these OTT shows often tend to be very open-minded. They've been exposed to Western films and shows also. They're much more curious about how is it being treated in Hindi films. As it is male sexuality, even straight men, it's very rarely explored in Indian cinema and Hindi cinema. So if it's being explored with sort of a good-looking, well-known actor, people are definitely much more curious about that.
This difference tells us a lot about the stories Indian film industry feels comfortable in telling. This is not a coincidence. It reflects deep-rooted societal discomfort with women's sexuality and a persistent stigma around women who sell sex. OTT platforms, despite their freedom, still hesitate to show women sex workers as full, complex people with modern lives. Meanwhile, male gigolos are easier to humanize. They become lovable rogues rather than tragic figures. Aseem, do you believe this gap also limits storytelling and boxes women into narrow roles and prevents us from seeing their full humanity?
So female sex workers, the Tawaif's characters, especially in Hindi cinema, were boxed in for the longest time. They were very sad women, sad characters. Their lives were miserably sad. They didn't have any love interest in their lives. They often could not be with their children, mistreated by their clients as well as the madams of the brothel. Umrao Jan is an example of, for instance, although Rekha does some beautiful dances, but there is this deep sadness about her life, the way she was kidnapped as a kid and then she reconnects to the mother in the end. That's been going on for a long time in Indian cinema. May have changed a tad bit over the years.
As Indian OTT grows, there's a real opportunity here to tell stories about women sex workers that are as nuanced and funny and modern as those about gigolos. Perhaps the real change starts when we stop choosing which stories get to be heard.